Good evening. I am your bard, your storyteller, your curator of tales, your teller of stories. I am Archibald, and welcome to episode 21 of Fabulously Creepy Stories. Now I know I've been away for quite some time, just a few weeks, but we're back, and we have a few more stories for you tonight, a few short stories. But before we begin, I would like to thank Edwin Crow for gifting us with these stories we are going to be reading tonight. In fact, if you like these stories, if you look down below in our special guest section in the About page, you will see his link right there to his own homepage if you want to read these stories yourself, or if you want to grant some chills and thrills to any friends of yours. And he has plenty more down there from what we're going to read tonight. Chalad, I see you are in today. Welcome back. I'm sorry I've been away for so long. Now, without further ado, let's get to our stories, shall we? Our first story tonight is called My Father Punished Me When I Talked to Ghost. Again, written by Edwin Crow. I've been blind since birth. As I grew up, everything was described to me in such vivid detail that I didn't even realize why it was that important to see, especially having no reference point to compare it. We lived in a single-floor ranch house. That's what Father told me. In my mind, of course, I could see, although unlike how a sighted person could. I had spatial awareness. I knew where my bedroom was, where the bathroom, living room, and kitchen were. Each wall had its own texture. I don't know if that was done on purpose or if I could feel things others never noticed. I rarely fell over. Only if Father or one of the visitors put something somewhere they shouldn't have. It was usually the visitors, and Father would shout. They visited infrequently, and only briefly. When they did, Father said I shouldn't speak to them, that it unsettled him. He worried when I saw something he didn't, saw it with my ears or by touch. Ellie was the first. She seemed very sweet. She asked me my name and why my face was so messed up. She was in the living room. I could hear where she sat from her breaths. Harsh, nasal sounds, as if her nose was blocked. When Father had a cold, he'd always breathe through his mouth, big labored breaths, as he wasn't used to it. When people mentioned my face, I always touched it, trying to work out why it was so strange to them. When I asked if I could touch theirs, there were always a pause. I guess sighted people never did that. Why would they need to anyway? When I asked Ellie if I could touch her face, she reluctantly agreed, but moments later Father entered the room and asked me, who I spoke to them. No, who I was speaking to. I told him, nobody. He would always punish me when I spoke about them. I think it scared him. He'd take my arm and march me off. I'd be knocked off balance and disoriented, to the point where, when he finally set me down, my hands would frantically search my surroundings until I knew where I was. It was usually my bedroom, though every now and then he'd lead me outside, in the middle of nowhere. That was the worst. I would be lost and scared. He told me about the road and ran in front of the house, and explained that the sounds I heard were cars, that they'd kill me if they touched me. Those sounds were my only means of recognizing my surroundings. I waited until I heard one, and then knew which way to run back to the house. I heard Ellie that evening. She whispered to me, saying she was scared. I whispered back, but didn't hear her. But she didn't hear, I'm sorry. I asked Father about Ellie. He didn't want to talk to her. I asked him why. He didn't reply. When I told him that she asked about my face, he asked me how I responded. I told him I wanted to touch hers. He laughed, though I knew he wasn't happy. I could hear the difference. When you laugh for pleasure, your mouth is wide open. When you pretend, your mouth is always closed. To me, the difference was obvious. It wasn't until I was older that he explained. He said we lived in a special place, connected to the other world. That sometimes dead people slip through. People who died in pain and wanted to reach the living. He explained that because I couldn't see, I was able to tune into that. That they knew I was listening when others weren't. He said I had to ignore it. Otherwise, he told me they latch on and never leave. All the dead want to be alive again. That's what he said. It was dangerous and they would trick me. He said he knew how to deal with them, but he couldn't help if they became attached to me. Alex appeared for me a few years later. She told me she was lost and didn't know where she was. I told her I wasn't allowed to speak to her. Still, she pleaded for help. I kept quiet, knowing what would happen if I said anything. Did you speak to them? Father asked. Though I was upset, I told him no. I wished I could help her. I knew what it was like to be lost and scared. Alex didn't whisper to me at all. I'd ignore her, and she ignored me. Father saved me, and I was thankful. After Alex, I knew what I needed to do, so I did it. The spirit stopped bothering me after that, for a very long time. That was until Sarah appeared. Sarah didn't give me a chance to be quiet. I was on my own, sitting in the living room and listening to the television. "Help," she said. "I need to find a way out." I stayed silent. "You can hear me, can't you?" she asked, surprised. "I'm not allowed to speak to you," I told her. "Please," she begged. "I'm scared. I'm lost. I want to see my daddy." I gripped the arms of the chair and told her I wasn't allowed. "He's dead," she said. I didn't answer. "Your father is dead," she said again. I wasn't going to fall for it. I heard banging from around the room as things began to fly, and the shelves began to shake. "Stop it!" I shouted, and it did. "Please help me leave," she said. I wasn't going to talk to her. I did the only thing I thought would help. I unlocked the front door, hoping she'd run out and get lost, just like I would do. When I heard from her no more, I locked the door and sat back down. I listened intently for any signs she was still here. Except for the sounds of the TV, it was silent. I hated when my heart raced, and excuse me. I hated when my heart raced. I became all too aware of the tick-tock feeling and the rise and fall within my chest. Like it was about to explode. When I heard my father's voice, I screamed. "Son," he said, "I need your help. I think I'm dying." I did what he told me to do. I didn't speak. If he did die, he'd never leave me. Instead, I raced out into the open air and shouted for help. I shouted until my voice was hoarse. I heard the sounds of cars racing along the road in front of my house. I shouted until I heard someone respond to it. It was a woman. "What's wrong?" they asked. I told them I think my father is dying. They asked what had happened to my face. I pleaded with them to help me, and they promised they would. I sat down on the grass and waited. Sometime later, the woman returned to me and asked if she could hold my hand. "I'm so sorry," she told me. I heard the sounds of sirens and the people rushing. I asked what was going on. The woman said she was there for me. As the noise died down, a man asked me a question. "I'm a paramedic," he said. "What happened to your face?" I told him I was fine. He asked if I was sure, and I told him I was. He asked if I minded him touching my face. I said it was okay. A moment later, I felt a pressure released from around my forehead, and the air felt cold against my skin. It sounded as if he were peeling an orange. I imagined that was my head and worried he'd expose my insides. I screamed and asked what he was doing. He told me everything was going to be okay, and the woman squeezed my hand, telling me to be brave. I didn't know what it was that I was experiencing. I felt a tight pain within my head, like when you smash your shin against something hard, followed by something I've come to understand as bright. It hurt so much, and I began to cry. "What happened to your eyes?" the paramedic asked. I said I was blind. He asked to check them. The pain returned when he examined them. "Do you know him?" the man asked the woman who helped me. She told him that I had been screaming for help and that she had come to my aid, but that she had never met me before. "How long have you had your eyes injured?" he asked me. I told him that I had been blind from birth. He asked me if I could see his fingers. I told him no. He asked if I could open my eyes. I said I didn't know what he meant. He asked if he could open them for me. I didn't respond. Then I felt his fingers on my face, fingers covered in something rubbery. Suddenly, it became bright again. I screamed. He tried to calm me. The woman squeezed my hand again. I didn't know what was happening. Things I couldn't describe came to me. It was like it always was, but multiplied 100-fold and so much more real. I carried on screaming as a fuzzy form came into view. "Just breathe, okay?" the paramedic said. "Everything will be fine. When was the last time you saw?" As my heart began to calm and my breathing slowed, I became distracted by what I was experiencing. It overwhelmed me. I wanted to cry, and I did. "How long has it been?" he asked again. "I've never seen anything before," I told him. The story's not quite over yet, but we'll just take a few second break. Thank you very much for the lemon donation, Shaolin. I hope you're enjoying the story thus far. It is getting quite interesting, wouldn't you say? And I'm sorry if you hear any noise coming from the background. It seems that the neighborhood children are out playing. What are they doing, not being inside, reading scary books? I don't know. Who can really tell what the children do these days? I sure don't know. Well, without further ado, let's continue the story and see how this creepy tale ends. where were we? So we're having technical difficulties with the book. Who could have known? Ah, there we go. I was told to keep an eye mask on for most of the day, only taking it off at night at first, to allow my eyes time to adjust. At the same time, I was placed in the custody of my aunt and uncle, and didn't even know who they were at first. They were shocked at what happened to me, and that I had never attended school. The past few years had been a roller coaster ride. The doctor said I may never have perfect vision, though what little I have is a godsend, and I'll take what I can get. I've only recently been learning to read and write, so I apologize if my English isn't the greatest, but it's the best I can do. I've been asking my aunt what happened to my father, but all she says is that he died of a heart attack. I asked what sort of man he was. She said he was her brother and she loved him no matter what. My uncle doesn't want to talk about him though. I've been using the computer a lot recently, and really been enjoying the internet. I can't believe such a thing exists. After being so lonely for so long, I can talk to whoever I want, whenever I want, about whatever I want. Though I worry of that. After all, how do I know if who I'm speaking to is alive? No one seems to share my father's concerns about that. Today, I was on a forum discussing the spirit world. I was so happy to find people who I could relate to. And someone curious about my username sent me a link to an article on a true crime website. It was about my father and mentioned me by name. They asked me who I was, and if I was the same person. According to the article, my mother had gone missing soon after my birth. It said I'd been bound so that I couldn't see, and that my father always wanted a daughter. They found 14 bodies in the basement. They said one got away, a girl by the name of Sarah Frank. She was the one that called the police. They found my father's car parked in the back of the house. They supposed he carried his victims into the basement via the storm entrance and left them there. Sarah had managed to get away after she agreed to be his daughter following 4 days of sustained torture. She stabbed him with a knife that he placed on the counter to butter some toast. I didn't want to believe it, and I'm not sure I would have if it weren't for the names of the victims, 2 of which stuck out. Ellie Farmer and Alex Riddle. I spoke to them both in the living room. To this day, I wonder if my father had been honest with me about a single thing in my life. Throughout it all, one question remains above all others. Did I speak to Ellie and Alex before or after he killed them? And that is the end of that tale. Welcome to the stream, Amberger. It's always a pleasure to see you, and I see you are enjoying the stories quite well. And I'm hoping it will give you the most fabulous nightmares tonight. And if you missed the stream earlier, as I mentioned, Edwin Crow is the writer of these stories we are reading tonight. If you do enjoy them, his link is down below in the About section underneath the Special Guest section. He has plenty of stories there, and I would like you all to thank him for allowing us to read his stories here tonight. Now, let us move on to the second story we have on the list here. Of course, also written by Edwin Crow. technology. The technology of the written book. Always gives us so much trouble, doesn't it? And thank you so much for the lemon, ice cream, and diamond donation. Audie Murphy, I'm sorry. It is so very generous, and it's been so long since we have seen you here. Then again, it's been so long since I've actually read the stories here. Welcome back. And as I mentioned before, if you're enjoying these stories, down below is the link to Alex Crow's website, where we got these fabulous stories from. Now our next story is called Tempting Fate. So let's begin. Detective Martina... excuse me. Detective Martinez dragged his little filter-tip cigarette, watching the fairy cherry rapidly descend on the orange paper. He heaved a deep sigh on the Excel, regretting having to work into the wee hours. The spent cigarette tumbled from his hand, landed on the wet tarmac with a fizz. He reached inside his raincoat and withdrew a fresh pair of surgical gloves. Snapping them onto his hands, the odor of latex billowed up. 1:45 a.m., the detective said into the dictator phone. Pineville Road, rail crossing, vehicle discovered, south side, off the tracks. Let's see, amateur. Thank you for the lemon, ice cream, and diamond at Audie Murphy. Yes, thank you so much, Audie. Audie, just got my eye patched off. Ooh, sounds like a story there. In fact, was it a story we have just read here on stream, Audie Murphy? I sure hope not. And this mask is being quite difficult tonight. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, the two brothers chanted into the bathroom mirror. The two brothers chanted into the bathroom mirror. They held their breath, a pregnant pause, before finishing off the ritual. Bloody Mary. The room went very dark, the only light coming from the plug safety bulb. Just enough for the brothers to make out their faces reflected back to them. Josh, Ben's younger brother by a clear 6 years, strained his eyes as he searched the mirror for Bloody Mary. He stared at his doppelganger, with a morbid hope his face would change to that haggard crone or bloody ghost, and his heart raced. I thought you said something was gonna happen, Josh said, pouting, turning to look at his brother. Ben kept his eyes locked in the mirror. It will. Trust me, just keep looking. He gasped. Josh watched as his brother's face contorted with terror. What? Josh returned his gaze to the mirror, frantically scanning for their reflections for something that would freak his brother out. Then he saw it. There it was. A third face. Pupilless eyes, hopelessly gazing into the abyss. Wrinkled skin that appeared leathery to the touch. A mouth opened in a silent moan. A scraggy, straw-like black hair. The crone. Bloody Mary. Josh drew his hands to his face in utter horror and screamed. A scream so piercing it would have fitted the apparition more than a 13-year-old boy. The low moans of the monstrous hag cut through his shrieks, scarring him further. He felt his body numb as he panicked. Tears began to gather in his eyes as his fright peaked. With a click, the lights went on. Happy Halloween, bro! Ben said, bursting out laughing, shaking the rubber Halloween mask in his brother's face. Josh lowered his head, his lip quivering. His reddened eyes appeared lost, his young mind trying to come to terms with this act of deception. Ben caught the devastating look on Josh's face, and his smile disappeared. "Oh, Josh, I'm sorry. I thought it was going to be a bit of fun," he said, before hugging his still shivering brother. The door opened wide as Andy, Ben's friend, swung into the room, holding out the frame. "So, he fell for it then?" he said, grinning. "F off," Ben mouthed over Josh's shoulder. Andy rolled his eyes and exited the room. I'm not sure which technical difficulties are worse. When the Rube refuses to appear, or when this mask refuses to stay in place. So, they are asking me to believe that the guy that lies still for a whole movie doesn't fart, cough, or sneeze? Ben said, remonstrating with the TV. It would have been quite a different film if he had farted. Shush! This is my favorite part. The two of them watched intensely as Cary Elwes' character steeled himself before savagely sawing through his own ankle. I recall that movie. Ben beamed. I like this because he feels so helpless. He makes the horrifying decision to amputate his own foot, which in the end is futile. Look at the hope in his eyes, he pointed, sitting at the edge of the chair. Hope makes people do insane things. Do you think he would do that if there was no obvious route of escape? That's what makes it so good. And when the hope is finally taken from him, all the more enjoyable. He continued to smile, leaning back in his chair. Sometimes, mate, you scare the crap out of me, Andy replied, clearly disturbed by the conversation. Oh, relax. Oh, hey, Ben said, seeing his brother at the bottom of the stairs, looking sheepish. Are you feeling any better now, buddy? He nodded slowly. That slow nod kids do when trying to recover from humiliation. Any wrong words would send them running back up the stairs. Do you want to come and watch the rest of the film with us? Are you sure that's a good idea, Ben? Sure it is. It's Halloween. The parents are away. What's better than to show an impressionable teenager some of the Jigsaw's twisted games? Andy shook his head. Josh sat on the floor, just feet from the TV. Say, Squirt, are you still up for going to the Magic Road tonight? He nodded again, not taking his eyes off the TV. Ben checked his watch. It was 11:15 p.m. If they were going to get there for midnight, they needed to leave soon. Scene change. The detective scribbled in a small notebook. Raindrops painted the paper infrequently as the last of the storm clouds left the area. Were there any signs the driver was under the influence? It was raining heavily when I got to the scene. Any possible tire tracks were already gone, Sheriff Jones responded, standing on the side of the road, well away from the train tracks in the car. Any sign of a struggle? No, sir. It appears the car stopped with some composure. Martinez approached the car and reached for the handle. It's locked, Jones said. Scene change again. The car jostled, the suspension doing its best to keep the vehicle steady on the uneven dirt road that led to the destination. Ben dipped the headlights as he saw lights approaching from the opposite direction. So, you looking forward to this, Josh? Andy said, turning his head. Josh nodded slowly, but his mind seemed elsewhere. He stared out of the side of the car, into the darkness beyond. Is this really how we're going to spend our Halloween? Andy asked Ben in a hushed tone. I'm sorry I had to babysit tonight, but you knew the deal before you came over. Who knows, this could be fun. Andy scoffed. You know it's an optical illusion, right? What, the magic road? Yeah. I guess so. I guess some of them are, but this one is different. I guarantee you, if we stop the vehicle and it moves on its own, it's going downhill. It's basic physics. Basic physics for a real road, not a magic road, Ben said, smiling and winking. Taken aback, Andrew inquired, Are you winding me up? You can't possibly believe that there's such a thing as a magic road. Haven't you heard the local legend? The one where ethereal children push the stalled car off the tracks, just in time as their approaching train thunders past. That's what they all say. Ethereal children? Do you know how dumb that sounds? I'm just saying, them's the stories. Well then, how do you explain the number of people whose cars were not whisked away by fairy children and get hit? Ethereal children. Whatever! What happened to them? Maybe they just wanted to die, so the children didn't save them. You have clearly lost it, Andy said while shaking his head. Come on, Ben conceded. It's just a bit of fun. Where's your sense of adventure? Ah, we're almost here. The car came to a halt at the stop sign at the T-junction. The road had been dead. Only one car had passed them on the whole journey. The car pulled onto the tarmac of the main road. It almost sighed with relief at the smooth surface. A railway crossing sign lit up brightly, reflecting the light from the headlamps. We're here, Ben said, slowing the car, parking directly on the tracks. He got out, the cool October air chilling his face. The beginnings of a rainstorm dotted his face. He pulled up his hood and plugged his hands into his pocket. Looks like it's starting to rain, Andy said, poking his head out of the window. Do you mind if I stay in the car? Do what you want, mate. Ben checked his watch. He made it 5 minutes before the train could arrive. Oh, I see you're getting quite nervous there, Shaolin. Wonder if this is going to be a predictable end to the story. I can't wait to see what happens. Scene change. The detective grunted at reaching for his wallet. He rifled through his credit cards and store cards, looking for the most useless one amongst them. He pulled out his gym membership, still and pristine as the day it was issued. I knew this would come in handy someday, he joked as he poked the card through the gap in the door, fishing for the unlock mechanism. He winced, visualizing his moments with a mental picture of their internal system. Aha! He exclaimed. And my wife said, Why join a gym? You'll never use it. The detective opened the door, leaned in and paused. Sheriff? Yes? Did you look inside the car? No, sir. Like I said, it was locked. Did you shine a flashlight around it at least? No. Jones said, confused. Martinez looked upright, silently shaking his head. He punched in some digits on his phone. Effin' rural mother effers. Excuse me? The sheriff said defensively. Hi. Yes, Detective Martinez. I need a forensic team, now. Yes, I know it's for an abandoned car. 20 minutes? Thank you. He put away his phone and sparked another cigarette. Effing amateurs. Another scene change. Gotta love these stories that go back and forth so often. It just heightens the tension, doesn't it? Under horizon, a light flickered. A bright white light, becoming more steady as the train that lit it was attached to approached. Here we go, Ben said, getting back into his car. Hey, put the key in the ignition and close the electric windows. I'm sorry, he didn't actually say that part. He put the key in the ignition and closed the electric windows. After drawing the key, he opened the door and threw the keys into the bushes behind him. What the F are you doing? Gotta make it realistic, don't I? Ben released the parking brakes. Are you effing crazy? Go get the keys! Calm down. The train is miles away. It's still a few miles away yet. Train? What effing train? That one, Ben said, pointing out to Andy's window. His jaw dropped at the sight of the bright, glowing object drawn nearer. This isn't effing funny, man. Open the effing doors! He said, frantically pulling on the handle that just flapped in his hands. No. You said it was all physics, nothing else. Open the effing door! Josh began to cry. Make them stop! Make them stop! Andy, calm down. You're upsetting Josh. Make them stop, he bawled, clutching his hands to his ears. Make who stop? Open the effing doors, Andy interrupted, leaning over Ben to get to the central lock, the button impotently depressed, lacking the power to activate the mechanisms. The rain began to lash down. The storm that had been brewing had erupted. The voices, they sound scared. What voices? I don't hear anything. You win, Ben. You effing win. This is a magic road. Now unlock the damn doors. Shut up. Shut up. Josh is trying to say something, he responded. The children's voices. Ben turned around in his seat and looked at his brother. Ha! I effing told you, didn't I effing tell you? He cried out, pushing Andy on the shoulder. The beacon of the approaching train began to brighten in the interior of the car. If you had a punchline of this joke, now would be a great time. Ben laughed, cupping his hands on his rain-covered windows. It's working! It's working! Make them stop! Josh continued to lament, lying down in the seat in clear agony. What the hell is happening? Andy said, shocked, watching as the car began to roll off the tracks. It's too late! We're not gonna make it! He said, pinching his eyes shut. The locomotive horn blared out, warning the car of its impending collision. Andy braced himself, imagining the car's integrity given up, and instantly on impact, at least it would be quick, he thought, before a certain calm washed over him. Woohoo! Ben said, delighted. What a rush! With trepidation, Andy opened his eyes, one by one, ducking as if he was worried the sky would fall. You're an effing a-hole. An a-hole, you realize that? The rain continued to lash the car, but then Ben didn't reply. His face was that of shock. He was looking at his brother. Andy turned to look at the subject of his friend's terror. Oh, crap. Scene. Change. Perhaps I should have stapled this thing. my forehead. Definitely need to work on the mechanics of my book, because it seems to be glitching on me. Give me one moment, please. Ah yes, this should work out. When the forensic team arrived, one sleep-deprived, angry man got out of the car. He retrieved his kit from the back seat. "Where do you want it, boss?" "Look for prints in the back of the car," Martinez said. "I'm not sure how successful we'll be. It rained a lot," he replied, wishing he was still in bed. "Just do it then," the detective replied, taking out another cigarette. "Hey, boss!" the forensic guy shouted. "Did you find something?" he replied, walking over to the crime scene with an unlit cigarette protruding from the side of his mouth. "Nothing." "Nothing? You did say you might not see anything." "Some particles around the handle, but they're too degraded. Otherwise completely clean. No one's touched this tonight." "What's the inside of the car look like?" "3 bodies, all male. 2 in their late teens, early 20s about. 1 around 12 or 13. They appeared different. They approached different sides of the car, each slipping on new latex gloves. Lacerations are on the neck, on both bodies. Looks like the main cause of death," Dan said it out loud, examining the body closest to him, while comparing identical wounds on the other. Bruising on the shoulders suggests that they were held back, probably before their necks were sliced. He stopped, confused. A confused look over his face. "What the hell?" He unclipped a small torch from his belt. For our American audience, a torch is a flashlight. And shone it on the bruises. The contusions are too small for adult hands. They appear childlike. They gazed at each other before turning in unison to the child in the back seat. He sat there motionless. He had bled from the ears. His eyes were shut. "Hey, kid, you there?" Martinez asked. "Yo, kid. Do you think he did this?" Inspecting the boy's hands, Dan replied, "His hands are a match, but I can't see him overpowering both of them on his own." "This is messed up," the detective announced, standing up again to light a cigarette. "Hang on, boss. I think he's breathing." "Who?" "The kid. The kid." "Sheriff, get him out of here," Martinez demanded. "You left him in there with dead bodies. If you don't get fired for this," he trailed off. The embarrassed sheriff scuttled over to the car, opening the unlocked door. "Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy, I'm a police officer. I'm here to help you. Do you know the names of your mommy and daddy?" The child did not respond. He spotted the blood from the little boy's ears. "Can you hear me at all, son?" The boy said nothing. Okay, the sheriff said, raising his voice, but trying hard not to sound threatening. "I'm going to lift you out of the car. Is that okay?" The boy remained silent. As careful as he could, Jones put his hands under the boy's legs and back and gradually slid him out of the car. "It's going to be okay, boy. What's your name?" But there was no response. "I'm going to take him back to the station," he said to Martinez, holding the child in his arms. "First thing you've done right all night, Sheriff." The detective watched the small-town sheriff put the boy in the back of his patrol car. He turned back to Dan, who was back in his own car, looking over the bodies. The rain had receded, replaced by clearing skies and ice-cold wind. He looked up at the stars, as if looking for some reason why they had happened, or why this had happened. When he looked back down, the patrol car was disappearing into the distance. A dance music beat erupted from Martinez's pocket. He pulled out his phone. "What is it?" "The boy. He's speaking," the sheriff said. I'll put you on speakerphone." "Say it again, boy." "It was the children," the boy said, almost in a trance, quiet and faint, but loud enough for the detective to hear it over the phone. "What was the children?" Jones asked. "They did it." "Did what? Kill your friends?" The boy nodded. "What children, son? We didn't see any." "The ones that pushed the car." "Pushed the car off the track? Were you stuck?" The boy nodded. "They said..." He went silent. "What did they say?" "What did they say?" the detective pushed, consciously turning away from the road to look him in the eye. Martinez was fixated on the phone, mouth slack with alarm. "They said they shouldn't have tested them. They said they needed to be punished." The boy began to cry. "They told me to get out of the car, but I couldn't. Their voices hurt too much. That's why they gave me this." He took a blood-stained knife from his coat. "Boy, that's a big knife. Can you put it somewhere safe?" the sheriff asked, his voice breaking. The voices. Are they still there?" The boy nodded. Sweat gathered on the sheriff's brow, a cold sweat that numbed his skin. "What are they saying?" Tears rolled down the boy's cheeks. I don't want to tell you." "You're safe now, son. You can tell me." "I can't." "Why not?" The boy looked away timidly. "They're talking about you." Jones gripped the steering wheel tightly, looked dead ahead, only taking his eyes off the road to look at the child in the rearview mirror. Nervously, he asked, What are they saying about me?" "They said you should have taken me out of the car earlier. They said that no child should see that. They say you need to be punished." Martinez couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Sheriff Jones, stop the car! Stop the car!" But he did not listen. Don't say things like that, son. That's not nice." The detective listened to the phone, watching the taillights of the police car almost disappear out of view. "They have a message for you," the boy said. "What's the message?" the sheriff said with a wobble in his voice. "Happy Halloween." The sounds of gurgling and sputtering were sent through the phone line as the detective watched the patrol car swerve off the road. The line went silent. "Sheriff, Sheriff! Martinez shouted down the phone. But all he could hear were the sounds of children laughing. And that is the end of that story. Quite a chilly one. Would have been quite perfect to read on Halloween for our Halloween stream, but alas, perhaps next time. And thank you so much for your donations, Audie Murphy. It's so generous of you. We all appreciate it here at Choppy Crew. And Audie, all this time, I never knew it was a mask. Good stories. Well, yes, I tried my very best to grow this out of my skin myself. But no luck. And really, it's an old mask. And it's slipping a little bit too much for my comfort. And I know I said I was going to read 3 stories, but looking at the time, it seems we are out of it. I'll save the next story for next time, and I'll have a few more coming from Edwin Crow, as long as he continues to give us permission to read these stories. I hope he appreciates this stream, and I hope you all appreciated this stream as well. And I definitely wish you all to have fabulously creepy stories. Let me say that again. And I sure hope you all have fabulously creepy nightmares tonight. Till then, we'll be back next week for episode 22 of Fabulously Creepy Stories. And tomorrow, Choppy will continue his video game streams. So we hope you'll see you then. Good night.